Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Creative Katie Karen Burchill. Today I have a tutorial for you in real time. And at the end of the video, I will use my art journal process cards to review the step-by-steps. So the first step on this page is to collage some items down. Now I downloaded a font from dafont.com and it looks like old newspaper script, and I can play with the sizes and print off as many of these as I want, and I love using this as collage paper. Now the first layers will peek through at the end, but those first layers also get pushed back by all preceding layers. So every page we need pattern, texture, color. So the collage paper is giving some pattern. You have the text. It is also going to give some wonderful texture. Where the ripped, torn edges are, you're going to be able to see that because the paint will catch in it in different ways. So even if all this collage paper that we put here, we don't see any pattern, it will still give texture, actual physical texture. I'm using fluid matte medium. You could use gel medium to adhere the collage papers down. This is a 7x10 page. And I've gessoed the page. Gesso is a bit of a primer, and it prepares the paper to take the medium that you throw at it. And I usually put that on every page. I just find the paints, everything works better when I do. So I'm making sure that this layer is completely dry, and then I will cut off the excess that goes over the edge of the page. I want to add some more pattern, so I grab this shelf liner and I'm using black acrylic paint and I'm just stamping with it. You don't have to buy expensive stamps to get marks on your paper. Look around your home. Shelf liners come in a lot of different patterns and designs. Sink liners, same thing. Once I'm done stamping, I'm going to make sure that this layer is dry. Now I want to paint with a rainbow of colors, and I've seen this done by a few other people in videos, and I can't remember the names, but I'm going to put a bead of the rainbow of colors. So I'm putting quinacridone magenta, orange, bright yellow, bright green, a blue-green, and dioxazine purple. And then I'm going to end with the magenta at the end because it overlaps. You just saw one of the brushes that I use. I actually use the smaller one. I think it is 2 inches across. Just making sure that everything is dry because I don't want the black smearing. So I'm taking the brush and I'm putting it into the beads of paint and pulling it down, loading the brush up, and I'm going to sweep across the page. I'm pressing hard, and then I'm going to load up with paint, more paint as it goes. Now you can see where I've put the collage papers, you're getting the texture shining through when I run the brush over top of that. And that's just adding one more thing of interest to your page. So as I'm going off screen, I'm loading up the brush. And if you need, you might have to reapply the beads of paint. Now you could put the paint on in swoops, and I kind of wish I had. But this is the first time I'm trying this particular way of applying paint to my background. So I'm learning what works, what doesn't, what I like. Now you can see there's a lot of white because I don't have quite enough paint on my brush. So I'm just applying it, stretching it across, getting a little bit better coverage, but I'm loving how it's catching in the collage papers. And all those stamping images are coming through. Now I'm just adding a little bit of color here. Instead of loading up the brush the way I did, I'm just grabbing a smaller brush and just applying the color where it would be in that stripe. Definitely something I'm going to try again. And making sure again that each layer is completely dry. This is a heat tool. This one's from Ranger. People sometimes use embossing tools. Then I use this stencil. It's called Fanciful Fern. It's a slimline stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, and I put modeling paste through the stencil using a key card. And I apologize, I lost that footage. Now this needs time to dry. Meanwhile, I cut out this carousel. This was from a coloring book site, and I printed it out, but I want it to be a silhouette. So I'm taking my makeup sponge with black paint and getting it pure pitch black. So you could do that with any outline and turn anything into a silhouette for this page. Now you'll note that the modeling paste is white and the carousel is going to be black. If you're using black and white with a colorful background, you're going to get a lot of contrast, and that's going to make the page work. I have a part here that I didn't cut out, so I'm just using my X-Acto knife to get out the final parts, the tiny part here. Be careful when you're doing this, because once the paper gets wet, of course, it gets a little more fragile and it's very easy to rip. And you want to be sure to lift up your cutout element once you're done covering it in paint so it doesn't stick to your tabletop or surface. And I use my heat tool to dry. While that's continuing to dry, I'm going to edge the page. Now I'm using my angle brush and black acrylic paint in a technique that is called floating acrylic. I'll put a link to the video where I teach that technique. You can use a Stabilo all pencil to shade around the outside edge, or a makeup sponge to get the black all the way around. That will frame your page. My carousel is a little too long, so I'm cutting it off, and I'm just going to adjust the height to fit my page. And once I have the placement, I'm going to use my fluid matte medium to glue it all down. The fluid matte medium goes on cloudy, looks white, but it dries perfectly clear. And the matte finish means you won't have that halo of shine where you've placed it, which is why I like using matte medium. If you're using Mod Podge, even the matte Mod Podge I find gives a little bit of shine if you don't put it over the entire page. Now for the sentiment on this page, I'm using the Inspired Words stencil from the Crafter's Workshop, and I'm putting the word imagine. I'm placing it where the lighter colors are because you won't be able to see it if I put it on the darker blue or the purple. You could put a sentiment that you've printed out on paper or stamped out on paper if you prefer, if you don't have a stencil with words. Or you can use alphabet stamps to spell out your word. And there we have the word imagine. Can you think of a good quote to put on this page? Something was missing in my background, and I decided that I needed a little bit more contrast or pattern, so I grabbed this onion blossom stencil, and I'm using the center of the onion blossom and just moving it across the page. This is just adding a little bit more contrast and finishing off the page. In the close-ups that are at the end, you will notice that every layer, everything we've put, we see in the final product. And everything just adds to the whole. I'm putting paint on the makeup sponge and patting it off on my glass surface, because you don't want a wet sponge that will seep under the stencil. This page from start to finish took under 30 minutes. If you don't want to use the floating acrylic technique, this is a technique you can use. Put the black paint on the makeup sponge, not super wet, and just rub it along the outside edge. The tape at the top I put to keep any of the paint out of the coils and to give me a straight edge across the top. I'll put this into the coils when I have all the pages done. I grab my white Posca pen and making sure that I've shaken it so that I get opaque paint, I'm going in a squiggly line. That seems to match the feel and the flow of the page. A straight line just didn't add anything to it. If you're not a subscriber to my channel, please hit the subscribe button and click on the bell and select the option to be notified of upcoming videos. That way you won't miss any. So there we have it, the finished page, bright and beautiful with black and white contrast. So we started off by collaging the text papers down. That gave some texture and pattern. We did some stamping with the shelf liner and black acrylic paint. Then we applied a base coat of a rainbow of colors using a large brush. We put modeling paste through the stencil and combined that with a collage focal image that we painted black to make it look silhouette. The two components make up the focal image. We edged the page with black paint, and we added a sentiment, this time using a stencil sentiment. Then we added some more stenciling for added contrast and interest to the background. Then I outlined the border with white Posca pen. Thank you so much for joining me. Leave me a comment, ask me a question, and until next time, go get creative.